Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News Friday night live stream. Do appreciate everyone who is already in the audience, waiting to join us. We've got quite the conversation for everyone tonight. First, in my first hour, Hugo Feugen, author of The Fuddy Hoax, is going to be joining us, and then in the second hour, we're going to be getting an update from Cyndi regarding her son Michal. And plus, we're going to be joined by Olivia Pleasant, who is an activist in the CPS arena. So we're going to be talking about lots of great stuff tonight. Make sure you stay tuned, and Hugo will actually be joining us again next weekend for an even longer conversation on this same subject. Tonight, we're going to delve into the Clowns in America connections. A unanimous act of Congress has sparked a $270 billion windfall across America. Have you guys requested your $1,818 check yet? Well, a new law from Congress has created this windfall. It's a lot like Social Security, but you don't have to be retired. And you can grab up to 24 of these a year. It's all part of a brand new income program, and it's explained in detail in a video at www.superpowerchecks.com. All you gotta do is sign up for the distribution list, and they show up in your mail without lifting a finger. Thousands of Americans are celebrating these paydays, and now you can too. Just go to www.superpowerchecks.com, watch the educational video. It's completely free. Remember, the information is free, and by supporting my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, excellent. Let me just give a couple of shout-outs to some people in the audience. We've got lots of friendly, familiar faces. I see my buddy Dana is here, people from Kansas, people from Michigan, patriots from all across the globe. Oh, there is my friend Terry Fell. Excellent. Let's see, who else is in the audience? Lots of patriots. I did see some people from Oregon, people from New York. We've also got people from the Ozarks here. Excellent. Southern Florida, upstate New York, Philadelphia, Riverside, California, Minnesota. My buddy Q-Tips, good to see you, friend. Los Angeles, Tennessee, Mississippi, the Missouri Ozarks, Australia, Arizona, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Nevada, Perth, Australia, there we are. Los Angeles, the Mojave Desert, Earth, outside Chicago, Missouri, Minnesota, more patriots from Australia, Tarzana, California, Northern Ireland, good to see you, friend. Portland, not Oregon, no, Oregon, not Portland. All right, guys, excellent. I am so happy to see everybody here. Patricia Furlong, thank you for that super chat so early in the broadcast. I appreciate that, my friend. All right, so while I am getting our first guest on the phone here, let me just get Hugo on the line. We'll see what's going on. Good evening, Hugo.
Hello.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing just great, thank you.
Excellent. So let me just switch my monitors here, and we'll introduce you to the audience. All right, excellent. Joining me now for the first time, which will be the first in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing two shows about this, is author and researcher Hugo Feugen. How are you tonight, Hugo?
Doing just great. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm so happy that you were able to do this tonight because this is really important stuff here. Now, I'm just going to say for the audience, I know about you because of the book, The Fuddy Hoax, and we've got some mutual friends in the research community. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, I'm a flight instructor. I've got some 2,500 flight hours and some 450 hours of instruction. And I've been the CEO or president of 3 different aviation companies, one of which did Microsoft Flight Simulator, the very popular and actually the most popular selling software in the world outside of operating systems. And a couple other companies as well, Cybernet Systems Corporation in Ann Arbor and Aviation Simulations, Inc. in Austin, Texas, and we did aviation simulations through voice control of aircraft. So it was as if we were training FAA and Transport Canada controllers with simulations. So aviation simulation is kind of my background. And so I guess there's a lot of things in that area, but I was brought onto this project because of that aviation background through another researcher, that is Nellie Ristvedt, who goes by the name Butter Dezillion, was researching a number of different things at this time, one of which was the birth certificate of Barack Obama. And she was also a researcher for Terry Lakin, who you might recall had some court-martial trouble because he refused to be sent abroad, not knowing for certain whether Barack Obama was legitimate president because of his qualifications. So anyway, Nellie, who is just a wonderful researcher, was asking questions on a board that I frequent, and she was asking if anyone could help her with some aviation questions on this crash that happened off Molokai back in 2011 or 2013, December of 2013. And I'd heard of that crash, but hadn't gone into it nearly the depth that she had gone into it. But she was having aviation question issues because she was sending out just a lot of FOIA requests, and they were coming back with aviation information that she was not quite prepared to puzzle her way through. So with my aviation background, I volunteered my expertise, such as it is, and I became involved in the project then. And I've been doing that really now another 6 years here almost.
And how long did it actually take you guys to write the book, Hugo? Because, I mean, it's quite extensive. You've got a lot of information in here. You know, I mean, I've got it pulled up on the screen so the audience can see, but 26 chapters, what looks like dozens and dozens of appendixes. So you've really done the research for this book. I would imagine it took you quite a while.
Well, the research took more like 3.5 years, 3 years, maybe 3.5 years. And writing the book was another year. It turned out to be 415 double column pages with hundreds of color pictures, usually video or photos, video frames or photos. And indeed, as you say, a number of different appendices to bore down and go into great detail in a number of tangential or specific areas that had to be investigated separately, and might seem a bit boring or tedious to some people, but for those people who are interested in those particular areas, they can bore down as their interests might allow them or dictate.
Excellent. So, as I was saying earlier, we're going to be having you back on the show next weekend because this subject, the whole thing, is quite convoluted, very in-depth, and you can't really understand Loretta Fuddy and, you know, potentially what could have happened without going a lot further back and getting into kind of the nuts and bolts of former President Obama and his family, and in terms of their connections to the intelligence community. So, you know, just thinking about that, you know, where do you think we should start in terms of, you know, how far back that goes? How can we track it?
Well, one of the central underpinnings of all of this chapter in history has to do with what we consider the qualifications of that person, Barack Obama. And as we see by the activities surrounding that, we see that this is, or it has all the features of the most important central activity of the Obama presidency and administration. Certainly the things he's brought to bear are extraordinary. And the reasons for that are usually hidden to most people, but they're worth plumbing, at least for some, this purpose probably.
Right.
We could go into many more hours than we have available here. I understand we have an hour, is that right, this evening?
That's right, sir,
but
yes.
We could talk about that background, and as you mentioned, there's intelligence community background for Barack Obama's family, and that is something that usually escapes most people. They think in terms of if it's a question of Barry's birth certificate, It's just that one piece of information. Does he or does he not qualify this or that as a person having been born in Hawaii or whatever else?
Right.
Some people have suggested and actually gone off into great tangents as to whether he was born in Kenya, as his ostensible father was, or Hawaii as the apparent place of his so-called mother, Stanley Ann Dunham. But really, to understand the question more fully and appropriately, you have to go back to the entire family and even generations prior to Barry's birth. And that would have to do with his ostensible grandmother, for example, the so-called Madeline Dunham, who is also known as Toot, and Gramps, his maternal grandfather, again, ostensibly, because I think ultimately we'll see that he's not the son of who we were told.
Right.
It's very different. And the reason for that, and the reason it's not a outlandish or so-called birther kind of statement that you have to be checked into a loony bin to believe, we just have to realize that this family was involved in the intelligence community for many decades, and we could plumb that in far more time than we have available here. But
wow.
Let me just say that very clearly, both Barack Obama's ostensible maternal grandparents were involved in the intelligence community deeply. Her Gramps, for example, was in Kansas working on the Boeing assembly line and was raising suspicions there. He was a paid informant, frankly, at the time. And people wanted to see him prosecuted for what they considered sabotage and things like that.
Wow. But
he wasn't. And it kind of rings as an echo to the current situation, where we ask in the current sense, why when Professor Misfud lies 3 times, why is he never charged? Well, when you scratch the surface just a little bit, you realize that these are paid people.
Yep.
They're on the payroll with these intelligence organizations. And of course, they have an implicit understanding that they're not going to be prosecuted and thrown in jail and that kind of thing.
Yep,
when we see it play out that way, we say, oh, well, what about justice and all of this kind of thing? Well, only if we understand what's behind what we have been told can we see those things more clearly.
Right.
And that was the case for Gramps, and it was also the case for Toot. The ostensible grandmother was very good at bookkeeping and involved as a banker in Hawaii, but she was also the banker for the Marcos family in the Philippines.
Ferdinand and Imelda.
Yeah, Ferdinand and Imelda, to keep track of all the shoes that she had. That was a lot of accounting background for that, and she was very good at it. And that actually rang through Stanley Ann's activities again later, where she was friends with Peter Geithner, for example, the father of Tim Geithner.
Oh, yeah.
In the Ford Foundation activities there in Indonesia, Ford Foundation. He was the Asian chief Whig or whatever back there. And he was also a financial person. And Stanley Ann did things in what they call microloans, which is also kind of a,
yes.
Well, we'll call it a globalist, New World Order financing technique that harkens to that New World Order. But anyway, they all had that kind of skill and background, and those followers of Q might recognize the statement of skill sets. Well, that comes up again and again, and this family was connected in that way and learned several different skill sets. And they went, one of the organizing principles in this early part of Barry's life was the University of Hawaii East-West Center, which is also very much a Central Intelligence Agency hotbed for training. And the people that go there often are recruited for various intel activities, and they are sent abroad typically. That is, Hawaii is a central location for being sent out into the Pacific area, for example.
I'd imagine it'd be pretty easy to deploy in a
yes.
environment
There's a
like
lot
that.
of things about Hawaii that make it especially nice in that category. That is certainly the central location, the isolatedness of that area. That is, these people can be watched very closely. We can check whether they go off the islands and so forth. We can put them up in housing and watch them very closely, which is a screening process that is very typical to the intel agencies wanting to train people and make sure that things are not slipping off the plate, and seeing how loyal these new trainees are. So all of those things play together. They'll also come up later in this aviation crash that we talk about, the Fuddy hoax. It's true, within the isolated Hawaii chain is yet again more isolated because of its Parkinson's disease, the leper colony, if you will. That is, people who were isolated there. So many aspects of that Molokai community ring true with isolatedness as one of their features. But anyway, back to the family. We hear and we know that Barry's ostensible father and ostensible mother, Stanley and Barack I, met at the East-West Center in the University of Hawaii in a Russian language learning class.
Oh, very interesting.
Learning Russian is one of the skills that intel community people might do well to know. So all of that plays together as well. We have Lolo Suturo in that mix later, after Barack I goes back to Harvard for a while. He very quickly leaves his apparent progeny in Stanley Ann's care. But anyway, one of the things to know about the intel community is a couple of things. One is learning these skill sets. Another is how to make money. And one of the things that they are skilled at doing, of course, is taking on other identities. And when you have other identities, they need to be somewhat cohesive. And so it's a standard practice, it's a standard skill set to, as one might write a novel and have a character developed, having alternate characters, or also known as, or second and third names, is very important. So that's part of the skill set for intel people.
Well, and money is extremely important as well, because these operations require vast sums of financing. And very possible that you get yourself into a situation where if you don't have any money, then you could be found out, you could get stuck.
Exactly, that's quite right. And so developing skill sets that you can have ongoing cash flow, that is, that the government or whomever else would want to pay you. Like you say, you don't want to get in trouble, you don't want to get shorted and fall into some trap. But if you can develop a monthly cash flow by being, who knows, we'll say a non-official cover or available to do this skill set, that could be very valuable. And we see in the passengers of the aircraft that went down, the Fuddy crash aircraft, a number of skill sets for people. So just, of course, that's coincident, even though we'll say that those people were all in on it and they all coordinated their stories. The skill set idea comes up again and again, and they're typically going to be paid monthly stipends or whatever. So anyway, Stanley Ann at the East-West Center in the University of Hawaii was learning apparently to be an anthropologist. And indeed, ultimately, she would get a PhD in anthropology through her life's work, or the professional work that she did, mostly in Indonesia. She came back to the University of Hawaii a couple times, but then again would go back to Indonesia and ply her anthropology trade in a little more advanced way. But each time, there's quite a bit of evidence that she was working for one intelligence front corporation or company right after another. That is, all of her revenue stream was coming from this US-based intel type of activity, even though it was anthropology. Well, in this case, she started out very early on taking demographics, statistics on the Indonesian citizens and villages, and it was our U.S. intel agency's interest to be able to characterize the people according to how they were supporters of this or that, right, whether they were communists or not, things like that. And the intel agencies had developed a list of people who were kind of high value communist targets, and the Pkwy, which is the basic support group for the first president of Indonesia, and that was President Sukarno. And he, shortly after independence, became the president, and he was the president until about 1968, I believe was the year. And in the years building up to 1968, which included Lolo Sutaro and Stanley Ann Dunham and even Barry Obama on the island, or on the islands of Indonesia, there was an ongoing coup. And that ongoing coup is kind of one of these echoes in the hallway here as well, because a coup needn't be a total flashpoint, one-time happening, that the State Department has taken over, that General so-and-so holds up in so-and-so, or the president is killed, as perhaps Libya's president was one day. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the long and the short is, the Indonesian circumstance had an ongoing coup feature, and that lasted literally several years. But Sukarno realized that there were people working against him, and they were trying to convert people. They were throwing people in jail. They were persecuting his supporters. And behind it all, he fingered the U.S. intel community as being behind that they were trying to get rid of him. And indeed, that very thing happened after several years of this ongoing coup. And unfortunately, as it said, there were roughly 1.5 million people who passed through the Indonesian jails over those years, say from about 1963 through 68 or so.
Wow.
And the numbers vary on the numbers that were killed. You can imagine that the statistics were a little less interesting to people when they are counting those kind of numbers. But anyway, the numbers vary from 250,000 to 3 million people, Indonesians, mostly supporters of the first president, mostly the communists, mostly ethnic Chinese. And those demographic statistics were the very thing that Stanley Ann Dunham was writing down in her notebook as a budding anthropologist.
Wow, just studying the movements of everyone.
Yeah, and the people that are seeing the statistics, the reports and so forth that she would forward, went to the people that we know in our intel community as being in charge of that very activity. So there's just zero doubt that that was their involvement. And
now, just for sake of the research, when you were doing your research and connecting Stanley and Dunham to these various companies, you know that they were part of some Intel type operation based upon historic ties to the Intel services, or were they open? Was it something more covert?
Well, they generally try to keep it fairly covert.
Right.
But through good research, we were able to dig those things up. And I would credit one particular individual, a historian for the Intel community, a former member thereof, Warren Madsen, has a wonderful book out called The Manufacturing of a President.
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
That's pretty well key.
Yeah.
But he's well respected and authoritative. And he's put that together and has a lot of these details that I'm quoting.
Excellent.
And one of those is that Lolo Soetoro, the stepfather of Barry and the husband of Stanley and Dunham, was in service to that second president. That is, even before he was, even before they left the East-West Center and had gone back to Indonesia, which was Lolo's home country. He was learning things at the East-West Center, and he was a military man, even though he was studying geology, supposedly, at the East-West Center. He was, when he went back, a military man that was, frankly, an assassin. And he was,
wow.
There was a well-known intel organization, our U.S. Intel, a so-called list of 5,000, which is known independently of that. And those targets were identified and eliminated. And
now, just for
Warren very clearly says that Lolo was one of the assassins for those people.
And just to be clear for the audience, Lolo Soetoro, this is Barack Obama's stepfather. In
Correct.
Indonesia. All right. Okay. So
they apparently married, I think when he was 2 or 3 or something like that, ostensibly in Hawaii. Though we have to say there is no birth certificate that has ever publicly appeared. There is a divorce certificate, but there is no wedding certificate for that.
Do we know? Do we know what business Lolo was supposed to be doing in Hawaii?
Well, he was going to school. He was going to school
Okay.
as a geologist. I believe he was getting a master's degree there, and he, I believe, got that.
Okay.
But then he was called back by the urgency of things going on in Indonesia, and he was a very trusted person to the General Suharto, who was going to become the second president.
Yes.
So in support of his boss, he was working on that ongoing coup. And in those years, where what we have then is Barry is introduced to this situation, I believe it was 1967. He comes to the island, and he not only has a transvestite nanny, but he has a mother who's collecting statistics on who to kill, and he has a stepfather who is killing him.
Now, do you think that that Lolo was working as an agent of both the Indonesian military regime and the United States intel agencies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right. And the
that's
same
very
for Stanley?
Clear. That is, the second president in becoming, General Suharto, was being supported by the U.S. intel groups, and that actually is expressed as well through an organization that Stanley Ann was a member of, in some sense at least, if not officially. We see her in at least a picture or two, a couple of pictures at least. This organization, a quasi-religious organization called Sabud. And that organization was fingered by the first president of Indonesia, Sukarno, as well as other high political figures in other neighboring countries, Ceylon, one of them. They had said that it's the U.S. intel agencies trying to get rid of President Sukarno, and
Subud
that
itself.
it was Subud that was the expression of that. That is, the Central Intelligence Agency or other intel agencies were working through Subud to accomplish that end.
Wow.
And Stanley Ann Dunham freely floats between several different intel agency fronting organizations and Subud and USAID, for example. And that came up in the 1975 church hearings in Congress, where it became clear from the heads of those intel agencies that all of their people in this or that country were also affiliated with the intel agencies of the United States.
Wow.
So there are just multiple, more than half a dozen kind of situations documented which show that Stanley Ann was finding that kind of employment. And this is all feeding into the anthropological research that she would ultimately get a PhD for.
Wow.
But anyway, so you have a transvestite nanny, a mother who's collecting statistics of people to kill, a stepfather who's actually killing them, and in 2012 or 14 or whatever, we have a president who comes out with what I thought was at the time the most stunning statement that I never believed a president would dare utter. And that was Barry saying, "I'm really good at killing people."
That
Hello?
is a stunning statement for a president to make.
Well, yes, and not without proof. That is, for example, we have the drone killing of an American without due process, and we have collateral damage of 3 other people being killed in that drone attack, and there's no apology. I mean, it's blatant disregard for our laws of due process. That person was deprived, that American was deprived of life and liberty. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that was central, I think, to Barry's early years. So what strikes us as so extreme was something he was willing to boast about. And that's just, that's indicative of his early life, I'm afraid, and something that I think continued in his life in the following years as well.
Most definitely. Real quick, Hugo, I just needed to go through and give a couple of thank yous to the audience for the super chats. First of all, Patricia Furlong, thank you so much for that. Lady Warrenon says, love you all, love you Red Pill 78. Thank you for your extensive research. Where we go one, we go all worldwide. Thank you for that, my friend. Michael Kenny says, happy to not see a chemtrail all summer, press 17. We got lots of 17s for that. Angry Shamrock said, so glad the truth is finally commonplace. Yes, it is a wonderful feeling. Q-Wife Maga Life says, fun fact, my brother was once senior IT for Google. He was the creator of the skip ad button, so although we don't like Google, the world still appreciates my brother. We all love Red Pill 78. Thank you. Dana says, how's Muffin? Where we bark one, we bark all. Keep up the great work. You guys just heard Muffin and Chi-Chi. There must have been somebody at the door downstairs. Sorry about that. I couldn't hit mute quick enough. Jeff Stewart says, just got the notice. Sorry you're late. Well, I'm glad that you're here anyways, Jeff. You can always rewind. And then Karma Anon, one of my fabulous mods, says, Obama will be exposed. Gitmo for life. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. It can't happen soon enough, though. You know, one thing I'd just like to mention is that you had said before, you know, how all of this is so shrouded in mystery. And and that's one of the things about Barack Obama that has always been noticed, even by the mainstream media. You know, they talked about how incredibly secretive he was, you know, sealing all of his records. There's only a couple of pictures that you can find. And, you know, the ones that have been released, you can find things that have been manipulated in them. The history of both him and his wife, his family, it's all been shrouded in mystery. So let's pick back up. Quite
so. I mean, when we go to an IRS office and we see a person's name on the desk, we can be assured that's not their real name, because they don't want to be persecuted, as it were, apart from their office work and I think that's rightly so, but this is the kind of background that the people in Subud were encouraged to do. That is, they were encouraged to come up with aliases, and we see that popping up. We have Stanley Ann Dunham, who is foisting another name on Barry, the Supar Ka, in a passport application, and we'll see that in Fuddy. Loretta Fuddy is also a member of Subud, and she goes by Deliana Anton, and that type of thing is very commonplace. It is, the Subud members were all encouraged. Now, why would that be? Well, since we do know that they did work on behalf of the U.S. intel community, they could reasonably want to keep themselves from being persecuted for that kind of activity, and as well when they come back to the U.S. or whatever. So they could use their alias in terms that might be discoverable, and when it came down to personal accountability and back in the U.S. or whatever, that they could escape that because they were just doing a job, as it were.
Now,
but anyway,
one
that
thing
was such clandestine activities were what goes on.
Yeah.
And a part of that, as I mentioned very briefly early on, is the background, all of the documents that would have to be generated. I mean, false papers and so forth. That rings true as well, comes up in Barry's life, in the Selective Service registration,
Social
use
Security
of
number,
multiple Social Security numbers, all, the falsification of records. We have John Brennan, who is, as the CEO of Analysis Corporation in 2008, is messing around in the records in the State Department as a contractor. And coincidentally, or at least juxtaposed time-wise, we have Lieutenant Quarles Harris, who dies, who's also working with that contractor in the State Department. And there was also already rumor that he was going to expose some dirty laundry in that activity. So all of that, that adjusting one's records comes up surprisingly, but not at all surprisingly if one understands the clandestine background of literally all the people in that family. They were grifters looking for money. They had skill sets of being able to produce documents for themselves and others. And I think one of those people was Loretta Fuddy, and that's exactly why she will be brought into the story very soon. But if we're going there, that is this nexus of the birth certificate. We need to realize that that there was a COLB, a certificate of live birth, that was provided in answer to the clamor of citizens asking about Barry's birth certificate and birth statistics. They suspected that Barry was not a U.S. citizen. In fact, by that Acton and Dystel author blurb that had been out there for a number of years, the claim was made that he was born in Indonesia. And so that was, I would suggest, one of these stories that is just as we've been talking about, the fake identity. One of those for Barry was his being a progeny of Barack Hussein Obama I, and having been born in Indonesia, and his grandmother saying, yes, I saw him here in Mombasa, and his mother gave birth to him here, all that kind of stuff. That is an intel community reflecting or echoing the made-up narrative that was appropriate at one point in time. So they're trying to support one another in that. Though I think we'll have to say at some point that all the evidence points to Barack Hussein Obama I from Kenya as not being Barry's father.
Now,
we know better, frankly.
If you had to speculate, and I know that there are several people that it could be. I've heard the leader of Subud, or how do you pronounce it? Subud, is that correct?
Yeah, Pak Subud. Subud is actually, the accent I believe is on the first one, so Subud
Okay. Subud.
would be
And-
the most proper. And he's got a really long name, but he often goes by Pak Subu.
And then Frank Marshall Davis is another possibility.
Yes, Frank Marshall Davis was a pornographer,
Yes.
and that's a skill set we need to consider. That is, Frank Marshall Davis was a known communist, and he was being supported with intel agency money to come out with a pornographic magazine, frankly. And
featuring Stanley Ann Dunham.
yeah, featuring Stanley Ann Dunham. Now, why would you do that? Why would Gramps, but Gramps is a paid FBI informant. He understands how this works.
Yes.
He has in a grifter family. He realizes people need to make money. So he's helping little Stanley Ann make a living. What? As a honeypot.
Yes.
That is, these intel agencies entrap people. And they let the cameras roll out of behind the wall and all that. And they entrap people and they use blackmail to get more money. That's all standard operation. And you would perhaps be surprised how many people, how many politicians succumb to that kind of temptation and influence. That is,
yes,
it's almost universal.
Exactly.
If you think, we have a Congress, you say, why aren't our Congress people voting the way we would want? Well, they're really voting for other interests and other people, and they're being blackmailed. Mm-hmm. And, once they are told that they need to be voting such and such a way, and that we have this blackmail information that you wouldn't want your wife to know about, well, yeah, that could be good for a long time. And we wonder how that plays into term limits. Well, people, of course, are interested in perpetuating their life in Congress for the financial and other benefits, but it works very much against us in having a toehold or a citizen's touch with our Congress people, because they get more and more distant to the interests of the Beltway.
Right.
But anyway,
this is quite literally the way that the cabal, if you will, has compromised this country, because for many decades, they've been working on compromising absolutely anybody, probably starting at the very, very early stages of their careers. And in the case of Barack, in my opinion, literally from the time that they were born, raising compromised individuals to be the perfect clown assassins or agents, if you will.
Yeah. Well, we should get to that before our time runs out. That is, Barry, we know, was born at a particular hospital, Peace Arch Hospital in, I think it was White Rock, British Columbia, which is just outside Vancouver.
Really?
And that Stanley Ann probably went there to pick him up. And he was not in any sense Stanley Ann's son. We have friends who knew her at the time, and she didn't show any baby fat. She, just a few weeks before, showed no indication. Afterward, showed no indication. And after she's got him and said his birthday was such and such, he's surprisingly mature. That is, he can sit up, for example, on the concrete floor, and he's supposedly only 3 or 4, 6 weeks old. That doesn't happen. That can only happen when a child is 5 or 6 months old and thereafter. So anyway, the activities that witnesses saw of Barry's young age as an infant don't match with the story. And one of the things we need to realize in terms of an intel community is one of the ways to make money is to take on children of other people. Other important people that have bastard children and could be highly influential, we'll say, of the 13 families kind of thing, or, has a family lineage that there's plenty of money to support them. If this person could just whatever, but it's inconvenient that we would take them into, who knows, we'll say the Rockefeller household at this point. It would be better if we had someone else doing the nanny activities over there to raise them. So in that sense, the Indonesian household of the Suteros, having a nanny was just absolutely standard stuff. That is, there's money available for nannies because when you're a grifter family in the intel agency and you take on the bastard children of prominent people, then there's a paycheck that goes with that.
I would imagine.
And we see that even now reflected at various levels. I mean, this whole foster agency stuff, you see sometimes situations getting entirely out of hand with parents that have 6, 7, 8, 9 kids. Basically, they're pasting lots of paychecks from the government together to make that happen. Well, that's very standard with the intel families, but on a grander scale. That is, there's more money available there than is available through the state foster agencies. So it's kicked up quite a few notches, as Emerald might say.
So, basically going from there, if Stanley Ann Dunham and Barack Obama's, given family, people that they state as his actual blood relatives, who's his real family?
Well, we're not ready for that discussion at this point.
So that's on next week's show.
One of the things of all of this is what are people ready for?
Right.
And red pilling, you probably, I'm going to infer, even though I don't know you at all, we all experience this little thing that is, what can we say to our friends and not be dismissed totally out of hand as a kook? Well, the intel agency is quite good at pejorizing, as I would say, throwing out terms and ridicule and stuff like that. The 66 memo or 67 memo saying, use the words conspiracy theorist,
right,
and you'll put them in their place. And more recently, just call them birthers, and they'll put them in their place.
Or call them racists, call them
far-right
extremists.
Use any kind of ridicule phrase that might stick, and we'll work to support that ridicule, and you'll look silly, and you'll change your ways. You'll even avoid the truths because you're fearful of losing your reputation.
Well, let's just say that I know my audience, and this is something that we've covered before. We've kind of danced around it, but I think that everyone watching the show right now it would be very interested to know. Let's say if you even had a theory. You don't have to say it tonight. We can talk about it next week if that'll bring the 2,000 people back that we're having watch right now. But I think that we could handle it. Just saying.
Well, let me clarify something I've already said. And in a Q kind of way, you could say, you have more than you know. I said this already.
Yep.
The child of very prominent people.
Right.
A bastard child of a very prominent person. That's the case.
Okay.
And
is it something you've said publicly before? Maybe I should just...
I'm sorry. What?
Oh. Is this Barack Obama's
you would recognize his real father in an instant.
Oh, no, I'm not doubting that. I'm just asking if it's something that you've stated publicly before.
No, I have not.
Ah, okay, all right. Well, fair enough. Maybe we can infer around
it. I haven't given somebody else the...
the scoop?
a scoop on it. No. Yeah, well, it's discussively... in another realm at the moment.
No problem.
Contentious, we'll say.
Okay.
So, but anyway, there's both a father and a mother, obviously, usually. Mm-hmm. Though that, is that questionable in this case? Out there. Anyway, long and the short is, Barry has been dancing around these details because he wants to keep them secret.
Right.
And it's kind of okay. It was obviously kind of okay that the Kenyan story would be floated for a while, and it kind of explains somewhat a black father and a white mother. Well, he's this kind of mulatto and so forth. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Anyway. How did that happen? Anyway, so the long and the short is Barry is somebody else's child. And he's been covering up this with multiple stories. And frankly, we see in Stanley Ann Dunham's activities for many years that she was preparing a number of different backgrounds for Barry. That is, she brought him to Indonesia. He would learn there the Indonesian language. He would learn a lot about Islam that he probably wouldn't so easily learn in the U.S. and Hawaii. There was the Kenyan background. There was the Pakistani background. There was the U.S. background. So there are 4 different backgrounds that Stanley Ann Dunham is actively preparing for her little boy, Barry. And that's something that is this idea of preparing alternate narratives for young people and one another, your family, that is like on steroids. She knew this game. She knew what she was doing. She was preparing that he might be the president of Indonesia at some point. He might be the president of Pakistan at some point. He might be the president of Kenya at some point. He might be the president of the United States.
Triple
and
threat.
if somebody can say, look at the crease on that pant leg, that just might tip the scale.
Right, right.
And so these folks, the John Brennan types who keep track of people's identities and so forth and prepare the paperwork and background, they're nimbly ready for whichever way it goes. I mean, it would be a shame if Barry was prepared to go for the presidency of the U.S. and actually some opportunity opened up in Kenya that looked more promising. You know, it was through the Mau Mau revolution, blah, 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 that such and such became possible. They want to be nimble. They want to be ready for that and take advantage where they can. They don't want to rule out their other options if they can't, if they can, if they don't have to. So anyway, he was doing that very thing, staying nimble, and by hiding these records and exposing only the ones that would be advantageous to him, that would be appropriate. But things like his attendance at Occidental or Columbia or Harvard, those were all just fictitious narratives. I mean, we've talked to plenty of students who should have been in the same classes with him, ostensibly were, given the recorded statistics, and have no recollection whatsoever. A professor who knows all the people at, I believe it was Columbia, who said he absolutely would have known everyone in that class, and he has no recollection whatsoever.
That's right.
That is just an indication of the fictitiousness of the narratives that are being held in play. And they're done by very professional people like John Brennan. And you'll see that symbiotic relationship with Brennan. That is, John Brennan was looking out for Barry, and when Barry becomes president, he looks out for John Brennan and makes him the director of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Well, and you
so
know that calls back.
One hand
also,
washes the other,
and that calls back also to the fact that Timothy Geithner's family was involved from an early point too. I had no idea about that.
Oh yes, and related to, I guess he made him Treasury Secretary, did he not? Tim Geithner was.
Yes, he did. Yes,
Treasury
he did.
Secretary.
Do we have any other people from his administration that you can trace back to the earlier family ties?
Have you ever heard of the name Peter Strzok?
Oh yes.
Yes. Well, it was his brother. I'm going to make sure I get the right names. I'm going to say it wrong, but I believe it was the brother of Peter Strzok. Maybe it was the father. I'm not absolutely sure, but who was a Jesuit priest in Kenya, who, when Barry went to visit and they chatted, he tells him, go to Chicago. There's a guy there, I believe it was Michael Flager, Reverend Michael Flager, a Catholic priest, who will, set you up and you can be a community organizer. Well, more one hand washing the other.
Yes.
And that's how Barry went to Chicago and became a community organizer. And Chicago, of course, or as you may not know, is a central place for Subud. So the places where Subud pops up, Indonesia, Hawaii, Seattle. There's another place for Stanley Ann to pop up. There's another place for Loretta Fuddy to pop up. Also, Subud is in Langley, Virginia. What's in Langley, Virginia? Oh,
clowns.
Why would that be? Why not Austin, Texas? Why would that be? Well, anyway, I'm telling you that the Peter Strzok's family, those connections were there. And Barry could get a paycheck. He could quickly meet, if he hadn't already, this Ayers, the school professor who was the bomber back in the Democratic underground. What am I thinking? Students for Democratic Society, Weather Underground.
Yes,
there we go.
Yes, Bill
those
Ayers.
guys. So he would find employment there. Barry also found employment in Chicago, I believe it was, with the Business International, also a Intel front organization.
That's right.
So it's like, well, if you're going to move, we're going to go from one. You can get a paycheck there. They're about all of these things. And you won't have to work real hard. You won't even have to go to school. You'll get good grades without even having to worry about that. So all of those things play into an Intel community family if you can just recognize some of the features of it. So those are there. And rearranging documents is their speciality. And in the case of Hawaii, when it came up, we talked about the certificate of live birth that Barry tried to foist on the public early in his first term, when that was being clamored for. There were problems with that certificate. I mean, people noted that it said race, I'm going to forget, African. Yeah, there it was.
Yep.
And there was no term African in use at the time. And we're pretty well certain that was actually foisted upon the Hawaii Department of Health by a lawyer for Barry, who wanted a certificate of live birth, presumably at Barry's behest, to say African, because otherwise it never would have happened. They have their own rules, and that was outside their own rules. And furthermore, the certification, the sealing of that document was fraudulent, fictitious, and It was discovered. And so, push come to shove, it was a potential problem. That is, when a guy named Donald Trump began the media circuit and was saying, why doesn't he show his birth certificate? And people were talking about Trump being a potential presidential candidate. That raised all the alarm bells and the red flags and so forth. So things were kicked into action. Barry suggested to his friend Neil Abercrombie, who was a Hawaii representative to Congress, that he should run for governor. And that was because the current governor of Hawaii, Linda Lingle, was a Republican and wouldn't be so likely to play ball in apparent document fraud. She might be able to put a stop to it. So Barry needed a friendly Democrat governor. And so in the fall of 2010, I believe that November election, 2010, Neil Abercrombie took office in December of 2010. And in January of 2011, who pops up as candidate for the Hawaii Department of Health director than Loretta Fuddy, who we have a lot of connection to. Barry would have known in that time. He would have known her very closely for decades. With the Subud connection, they would have been in the same place. They were also in Seattle in like years. They were literally at addresses that were less than a mile apart. In fact, a lot less than a mile apart. So there's all kinds of commonality that Fuddy and Barry have together, and that I'm sure it was highly desired that, let me take a drink here.
Right. Well, on that note, when we get to the closeness of Loretta Fuddy and Barack Obama, we're at the top of the hour.
Oh, yeah.
So I do need to give some thank yous to the audience. We had a couple of super chats here. Let's see, starting with Gregory Klagenberg. It is Greg from CVine News. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you for that super chat. Michael Kenny said, Michal is Barry's chief of staff. Didn't forget the OF not safe for YouTube. Sorry, I don't know what that means, Michael. Sorry. Robin Stillman, is all of this background info in the book The Fuddy Hoax? I would assume that answer is yes, Hugo?
There is a reflection on newer research than the book comes out with, but if you were to look at the media page on the Fuddy Hoax, the newer things are filled in there.
Okay, excellent. And then Michael Kenny again says, we can shame people like Big Mike, simply by saying stop wearing transvestite face. Food for thought. Thank you, Michael, for that super chat. New Guardian said Barry Rockefeller. And I just want to say that there were quite a few people who were speculating that the Rockefeller lineage might be where Barry came from. Then Bill C. says, I fought for 20 years for this country. I will never walk, sleep, or even pick up my grandkids again just to learn this evil is going on. No, no, no. And that's why we're here fighting, Billy. And then Michael Kenny says, again, thank you, Bill, for your service. And, of course, thank you, Bill, from all of us for your service. All right, so just to hold us off until next week, you guys, many people want to continue with the story and get to the deep dive on Loretta Fuddy. I want to just make sure everyone is aware this is exactly what we're going to be doing next Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hugo is going to be joining us for the entire 2 hours to complete the story as far as we know it. And we're just going to be presenting the evidence and talking about all these things that don't match up. But in the meantime, if you'd like to get a bead on it before Hugo comes back next week, you can visit thefuddyhoax.com. The book is available for sale right there. And we're going to have lots of great information to continue this conversation next week. Hugo, anything that you want to leave us with or any dangling threads that you want to wrap up real quick before we say goodnight for the night?
Well, I want to leave you with the idea that the central activity in Barry's Obama administration is the Fuddy circumstance. Over the 2-3 years that Fuddy was in office, Barry is trying to make sure that he has a follow-on to his presidency so that his work can be accomplished, because he sees it's not going to be completed, and he needs to make sure there's an ongoing coup and the next Republican is not going to have any chance to become elected. That's why they never thought that Trump would be president. But he was showing so well in 2011 that they had to do something about it, and kicking it up several notches is what they did. And they brought all kinds of things to bear that just show their hand.
Excellent. All right. Well, Hugo, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and spending this hour with us. I'm so looking forward to next week. I really wish that we didn't have already a full booked weekend, because I would have loved to just keep going. But thanks again, my friend. And I sure hope that people in the audience go check out thefuddyhoax.com and get yourself a copy of that book, because it is amazing.
Very good. Thank you much.
All right.
Appreciate
thank you,
it.
Hugo. And thanks again for being here. All right, guys. I just want to say that I am so happy that Hugo was able to join us. We're going to be bringing in my next two guests in just a moment. You guys, I am human, and I must take a quick restroom break. So I will literally be back in 2 minutes. In the meantime, what we're going to do is take a listen to Promises Made, Promises Kept from my friend Jason Was a Gentile.
To those soldiers.
Do I wanna see me in jail? Yeah, yeah. Do I want Hillary in the cell? Yeah, yeah. Am I done to right with 45? Yeah, yeah. At a rally, do I feel alive? Yeah, yeah. Will I wall slow down the cartels? Yeah. They say, will I vote Trump 2020? Hell yeah. I'm conservative and you can tell, yeah, yeah. Where we go when we go all in, yeah. Promises made and promises kept. I can roll with a press like that. Promises made and promises kept. Like that.
Grab your popcorn, it's about to go down. If you didn't know, I guarantee you know now. The criminal cabal try to keep it on the low now, but we got the right guy for us. first showdown at the Trump rally. People screaming so loud, Patriots united, and we're standing so proud. Panic in DC, ain't nowhere to go now. Say goodbye to the deep state, we're in control now.
See, call me in jail, yeah, yeah. Do I want Hillary in a cell, yeah, yeah. Am I down to ride with 45, yeah, yeah. At a rally, do I feel alive, yeah, yeah. Will a wall slow down the cartels, yeah. They say, will I vote Trump 2020, hell yeah. I'm conservative and you can tell, yeah, yeah. Where we go when we go all in, yeah. Promises made and promises kept.
Yeah, Jay.
I can roll with a press like that. Promises made and promises kept. I can roll with a press like that.
Let's go. Jason was a Gentile, persevering on. Red pill music up, it's time to get it on. Wake 'em up and make 'em realize what's going on. The great awakening that we've been waiting for so long. Where we go, when we go, all together we're so strong. But divided we are weak, that was a plan all along. They thought they got it right, but boy, they got it wrong. Cause they never realized that we would find where we belong. Red MAGA hat, and I'm proud to put it on. And if that makes you mad, go ahead and change the song. Cause I'm a patriot, so what you hating on? Wake up and ask yourself, what team you playing on?
Jason was a Gentile and severe none. Rocking with that patriot music. Jason was a Gentile and severe none. To American citizens, red pill music. Na 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 na, eh, oh, 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 oh. I represent my God and my country. Na 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 na, eh, oh, 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 oh. Shout out to Red Pill 78. Na 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 na, eh, oh, 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 oh. I represent my God and my country. Na 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 na, eh, oh, oh, oh.
General Flynn.
Shout out to General Flynn. Do I wanna see call me in jail? Yeah, yeah. Do I want Hillary in a cell? Yeah, yeah. Am I down to ride with 45? Yeah, yeah. At a rally, do I feel alive? Yeah, yeah. Will a wall slow down the cartels? Yeah. They say, will I vote Trump 2020? Hell yeah. I'm conservative and you can tell, yeah, yeah. Where we go when we go all in, yeah. Promises made and promises kept. I can roll with a press like that. Promises made and promises kept. I can roll with a press like that.
When we go on.
All right, and we're back. Thank you guys so much. That was definitely much needed. I drinking some coffee and drinking some water, you guys. I am excited to have my next two guests with us. They are going to be joining us on the Zoom call in just a moment. In the meantime, I wanted to go through and just see that there was another super chat from my buddy God's Guy. What's up, Guy? Good to see you, friend. So while we're waiting for Olivia and Cyndi to join us, let's go ahead and just go through the chat. I hope you guys had a great week, and very, very, very excited for my next caller. We're going to be getting an update on the situation with Cyndi's son, Michael. You guys, this is going to be a difficult program tonight. I'm not going to lie. But of course, you know me. It's also going to be tinged with a bit of hopefulness, I guess I should say. So once we get Cyndi and Olivia on the line, we're going to go through that. We're going to get that update on Michael, and we're going to have a much longer conversation about what we can do to overcome this stuff. And I just also want to announce that God's Guy, my good friend and fellow YouTuber, he will be joining us on the program next Saturday, near the end of the program. First, in the first hour or maybe an hour and a half, depending on how much information there is. Jeffrey Peterson, Jeffrey Peterson is joining us tomorrow night. You know, guys, I'm actually blanking on who's going to be with us next Saturday, but I can tell you for certain that God's Guy will be there, and he will be debuting a new song and a new video that he wants to share with us. God's Guy is one of the best people that I know, extremely positive. He knows a lot about, what it takes to live your life the right way. And so I love having him on here, you guys. He's got a great message, always has a great message. All right, so God, what about the Fuddy hoax, you guys? I know that that was a bit of a misdirect because we didn't actually get too much to Loretta Fuddy, but it's going to be coming up. It's going to be coming up. Now, do you guys remember this tweet from President Trump? This was back in 2013. How amazing. The state health director who verified copies of Obama's birth certificate died in a plane crash today. All others lived. Wow. That's right. Thank you so much, Sunshine. That is going to be Hugo next Saturday. Sorry, I've got a lot going on in front of me. I've got 4 different monitors with information scrolling on all of them, trying to keep my eyes on it. Michael Kenny just said at RP Mom, you need to book, you need to write a book on parenting. Oh, well, I think that she would probably have a lot to say, because she certainly did a good job with me, if I do say so myself. Love my mom. So glad that she can be here with me at work every day and see what it is that I'm doing. This is Jeffrey Peterson. Jeffrey Peterson, he was my guest several weeks back. He was here talking about the Arizona Mafia. That's the Jeffrey Peterson. I know that there are actually several people out there with the name Jeffrey Peterson, but this one is he's a Silicon Valley guy. Basically started a social media company and retired after making tons of money, then realized that he was involved with the wrong people through his connections to the Democratic Party. Now, this one spills over into Mexico, and then by virtue of that fact into Keith Rainier and Allison Mack and those people. So we are going to be investigating some new news that's coming out of that area. And in the meantime, we've got news all week. As you guys know, plenty of things. Let's just see. We've got some stuff in the chat here. Somebody said, Juan07 said Obama's mom was dark-skinned and white, not dad, not those we think. Total Crown intelligence creation. I would not want to argue with that, you know? I mean, I have no idea who his parents are. Nick says, I think the Arizona Mafia is behind the FBI document calling Q followers a terrorist threat. It came from the Phoenix field office. You know, what's interesting about that is the document doesn't actually say that. I read today that that was something completely made up by Yahoo News. I actually have the actual document, you guys. If you want to go over that, we can do that while I'm waiting for Cyndi and for Olivia to jump on the line with us. Let me see. Let me get that pulled up here, and we can actually take a look. I'm pretty sure I did download it, and if I didn't, then I think I know where to go to get it. Let's see. Go to my downloads. Gosh, maybe I didn't download it, guys. Let me see. FBI, I do have it. Let's go ahead and take a look. All right, here is the intelligence bulletin from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But yes, you were correct. That is from the Phoenix field office, and that's where Jill McCabe works. So anti-government, identity-based, and fringe political conspiracy theories very likely motivate some domestic extremists to commit criminal, sometimes violent activity. And this was apparently the actual document. Now, like I said, I just read... okay, newly enlightened, if your screen is out of focus, that's the settings on your device, because I am streaming in 1080p at 60 frames per second. So what you want to do, anyone, the source was Snopes, another BS outlet. Okay, you guys can't get on. Why can't you get on? Let's see. Looks like they are having some trouble connecting. I sent a new link, guys. Let's see. It's that one right there. That is the link. Let me see. Invite. I'm going to copy the invitation again. I'm going to send it again. Sorry, guys. Looks like they are having some troubles connecting to the show. There we go. Please follow this link, ladies, if you are listening. I just sent you another one. Let's see. But yes, if anyone is having any issues with the way that the stream looks, sometimes YouTube likes to play games. So what you want to do is make sure that you check your settings, that you're running in full 1080, because this is gold right here, you guys. I am broadcasting on a fiber optic connection at over 1 gigabyte per second, so it really should be going well. I'm going to go ahead and just check in with here we are. We've got Cyndi on the line right now. Cyndi, are you there, my friend? Cyndi, I don't have audio from you. Okay. Cyndi, hello?
Hi, yeah, let me just get my video working here.
No problem. I'm glad that you were able to get that. Have you spoken with Olivia? Did she receive that new link I just sent?
Yeah, she's probably, I'm going to text her now, probably
Okay.
getting on here shortly.
Okay, not a problem. Not a problem. And then, let's see. While you're doing that, what I'm going to do is pull up that GoFundMe for your cause there to bring Michael home. This would be for the legal fees.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
No problem. No problem. Now, I'm sure that everyone here remembers that Cyndie is a mother from Colorado, well, living in Colorado, as it were. She had moved at the behest of her son's doctors to Colorado with the idea of getting him the medical attention that was necessary. And I'm sorry, Cyndie, could you please send me that link in a new email real quickly? I'm having trouble locating it in the several emails that we have right now.
Yeah, hang on.
Thank you. So, Cyndie moved to Colorado, and once she got there, she found that there was some strange pushback from the school. Michael had some special needs that needed to be attended to, and once the school declined to provide those needs, she decided to homeschool him because it was quite obvious that she was going to be in a much better position to provide him with the specific care that was necessary. And once that happened, essentially the county there in Colorado where they were living decided that they were going to take her son away from her. And since that time, it's been quite the battle. Now, how many days has it been now, Cyndie, since Michael has not been home?
Today is day 80.
Day 80. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I can't get that GoFundMe, so I don't know if you can find. I can't seem to get it up.
No problem. Oh, you know what? I did copy and paste it. All right. So I'm going to put this in the chat box for everyone. If they'd like to go ahead and support you, then they'll be able to. Now, just before the show, Cyndie, we were chatting quickly, and you mentioned that you actually were able to see Michael today. How did that go?
Yeah, I couldn't remember the last time I came on your show if I had a visit yet. I saw him for the third time today.
Okay, I believe it was the very first time. The last time you were on the show was the first time that they had allowed you to visit, and they had told you they had some weird conditions for you, that you weren't able to tell him that you loved him. Or speak to him, like, about seeing him in the future, some strange constraints.
Right. I wasn't allowed to tell him that I loved him or missed him, and this was the first time I was going to be able to have any contact with him in 66 days. And just to update any new viewers on your show, my son was taken 80 days ago on May 17th. He was illegally seized by the Department of Human Services with a false petition that they had created, stating that I was possibly misrepresenting his medical illness. And I have an attorney, and we filed a writ of habeas corpus, just to kind of update you guys. We're still waiting on the ruling for that. They also had given us an inaccurate case file number. And so somebody from watching one of the shows emailed me at the email, my Bring Michael Home 1111 at Gmail email, and had given me the correct case number. And that person, it was missing 4 numbers. So we were able to pull up a couple of documents. It's not all in there. And we were able to pull up and see that the judge had signed off on an authorization for them to take him out of the state to Disney World. And for anybody who hasn't heard, my son has a seizure disorder and a couple of other, medical issues. And that has caused him to be intellectually and developmentally disabled. So he's 7. I don't know if you still have a picture of him. I tried to send one to you on the messenger and chat. I'm trying to get his picture out there as much as possible. And then I had a second visit the following week. I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. So then when they removed him, it was under the guise of helping me, just to kind of do a very short version of all the things that had happened, under the guise of helping me with a medical navigator. And now they're coming back with their stance saying Well, I knew all along that I was supposed to take some sort of a service plan, which was never given to me. That's nowhere to be found. And if I wasn't going to take the service plan, then they were going to remove my son. And there's no proof of that anywhere. That was never told to me. They had told me to come down and sign a paper to the courthouse that I didn't want their medical navigator because my son was receiving services at that point for his medical condition. And I didn't think I needed a medical navigator. And when I went down to refuse that, it was a full-blown court hearing, secret court hearing. So I had nothing to refute their false petition with. No paperwork, no attorney, nothing. So that's something that kind of the way that transpired. No due process, no child abuse, no neglect, no nothing. I saw him for a second time last Friday. He kept asking to come home. He kept asking to, he wanted to hug me forever. He said he doesn't like where he's at. They won't give me his location, his whereabouts, nothing. I have to meet him in a room at the Department of Health Services office. The stipulations are I can't ask him any questions about anything that's going on wherever he is. I'm not allowed to ask him questions about what he's doing unless he volunteers the information. And then they offered me a third visit today. And about an hour before my third visit today, I received an email from the department stating that he had fallen into some wood mulch or some wood, chips, and had some scratches on his eyes. So they didn't want me to be alarmed when I saw him. So I didn't think much of it because he's a 7-year-old little boy, Right. I just thought they were notifying me of the scratches. And when I got to the visit, he has like what appears, and I'm not a doctor, so before I make any firm accusations, but when I get to the visit today, he has what appears to be a couple of days old black eye. It's already purple. So wow. No fresh scratches. He doesn't tell me anything about getting hurt. I'm not allowed to ask. And I know that if he had gotten hurt today, he would have told me. So now here he is with this black eye that I'm not allowed to ask about. And I'm just infuriated inside. Just, kids get black eyes, they fall. But the fact that they told me an hour before the visit that it was a scrape was, seemed almost like we're telling you this just so you don't get alarmed when you see the condition of his eye. And I can't prove any of this because they wouldn't let me take a picture. I'm not allowed to bring my phone or camera in. It's just infuriating because he is disabled and he is, you have to have a lot of patience with him. And I'm going to just say this, if somebody hit him, I don't see how he can get a black eye from mulch. If somebody hit him and lost their patience with him, they will never see the end of me. I'm just so angry, Red Pill.
Well, you have a lot of justification.
He's a precious, sweet little boy.
Did he at all try to talk to you about the black eye? Was he trying to communicate with you? Did it seem like they told him there are certain things you can't say to your mom?
Well, what was interesting and what was the red flag for me is he told me that he had gone skating with his camp a couple of days ago. Now, he's not supposed to be, as far as I understand, not supervised with these activities because of his disabilities. And he told me that he hurt his arm skating and he fell and his arm snapped, but it's better now. So if he's telling me something that happened a couple days ago, it appears to me that if a couple hours ago, number one, it would be fresh scratches, not a purple black eye. Right. Number two, I don't, and I'm not a doctor. Maybe it would have been a purple black eye. Maybe it was hard wood chips. I'm not, I don't have any valid proof, but he mentioned nothing about it. So it looked, and then he wears glasses. So
and were his glasses okay?
So how did it get underneath his glasses without the glasses getting broken?
Right.
That was, how does he have a black eye under his glasses when the glasses weren't broken if he fell on wood. The story didn't add up. So I saw him today, and then they're taking him out of state to Disney World tomorrow morning. He didn't want to go. I told him, just have a good time.
Who exactly is this? Have they told you, or you just have to be okay with the fact that your child is being taken out of state by people you don't know?
Well, this is the thing. I don't even know who's taking him. He's never been on an airplane because of the autism.
Oh my God.
He's scared. He's visibly looks worn out and scared. He looks exhausted, and with the black eyes. So here I'm sitting in front, shaggy hair, not cut, black eye. I'm sitting here going, this isn't my son, and so I don't want to scare him. So I tell him to have a good time and to be safe, because he doesn't have an awareness of safety around him. He'll just run out in the street. So I say to him, just listen to the grown-ups you're going with. I can't even say names because I don't know who they are, and a lot of people reach out to me and say, well, I would do this and I would do that. And if it was my son, he wouldn't be going. So number one, all of this happened I just need to say this out loud. All of this happened behind my back in a secret court hearing.
Exactly.
So unless I have a U.S. Marshal that's available to come and help me, take my son back, I'm going to go to jail. You know what I mean? If I go up and kidnap my son from a camp, which I wouldn't do, I'm going to go to jail because at this point, I have to listen to my attorney. So we filed everything we could file. We filed every objection. The judge said he can go. She signed it prior to ever asking us. I don't think they ever were going to even confer with us.
No.
And so what are my options? File an emergency Well, we've already filed 3 of them.
Right.
So I made it noted to everybody, his doctors at the hospital, his, the department, if anything happens to him while he's out of state, because the heat is a trigger for his seizures, then they're going to be accountable. That's the best I can do. There's not another paperwork that I can file. Do I think this is okay? No. When I file a federal suit, eventually this will come up in it. I don't think that they have the right to do this. I feel very powerless. I've never been without any of my 4 children. My 2 older that are, in college, and my daughter. They're also. The school's supposed to start next week here. I don't know if they're missing school to take him to Disney. I don't know what he's supposed to enroll in a new school, which I had a big battle with the school. I think we had talked about where they weren't providing the nurse that the doctor ordered.
Right.
So he's supposed to start in a new school, which I haven't enrolled him in. I don't know where my son's going to school. It's like a circus.
Just for some background, because it looks like we've got a couple of new people in the audience tonight. For anyone who doesn't know, CPS is almost in an extra legal status. There seem to be many cases where they flagrantly violate the rights of the adult and the children. There have been many strange things that took place in this case and in many others that I've researched, where basically the agency and sometimes even the judges and lawyers that are involved are colluding together to steal children from these parents. Now, there are many different reasons why it could be taking place, and I see a lot of people speculating on that, but I want everyone to know that Cyndi is doing absolutely everything within her power from a legal standpoint, because once they decided that they wanted to take her child, there was nothing that she could do. They said, we've got the paperwork. We've already decided this. The judge said, you're not a good mother, so we're going to do this until you can prove that you are a good mother. And I've known many people in Cyndi's situation. So before you pass judgment and think, how could someone just let their child be taken? It is not even like that. This is a situation where children are being stolen through an extra legal means. And this is the point of what we're talking about. Child Protective Services in so many cases have just, violated the rights of all these people. And some people never see their children again. I'm really hoping that Cyndi's going to be one of the lucky ones, that she's going to be able to get Michael to come back home. But once they've decided that they want to mess with your life and they want to insert themselves and take your children away, sometimes, unfortunately, it ruins people's lives. Children never come home. You know, I mean, like, I saw someone say, you know, why didn't she just take her kid? You know, so, you know, once there's like this legal precedent that's been set and the judge has said, you know, the child has to go with this CPS minder and now is going to be living with this foster family. If you took your child, you would immediately have a bench warrant out for your arrest. You would immediately lose any right to custody. They would not allow you to come back and have a relationship with your child. And if you ran, then you've got to worry about living on the run. What law-abiding person in this audience would want to put themselves in that situation? Cyndie wanted to trust the system. She wanted to trust the law. She had absolutely no idea that there were people out there that would do these kinds of things. Now, Cyndie, somebody actually sent me an email from Colorado earlier today, or they may have sent it within the last week, but I just saw it today. And they told me that that the whole situation, you know, that you went through, you know, being, you know, said you just needed to come in and sign something, not telling you that it's a court case, you know, where they're going to decide whether they're going to take your kid. They've already decided all that. But you show up and they tell you to sign this and they tell you it's one thing. Well, apparently 9 times out of 10, that document has some type of blame admitted in it. So you think that you're signing it for one thing, but instead you're actually saying, oh, yeah, I abused my child, you know, and then they're...
I know what they're talking about. What they're talking about is, so in my case, they came in, they appeared that they were being helpful and that they wanted to give me a medical navigator.
Yep.
I had no idea that they had a frame up to steal my son, who was lucrative to them, who was worth money. And what I did was I actually didn't need the service, but the night before this meeting that they wanted me to sign up for it. And I thought, well, that wouldn't be so bad having somebody to help me navigate the appointments. I got a call from a whistleblower who had retired from the department who told me, don't sign the document. It's a confession. And we don't have that service. They're going to take your kid. And I thought this guy was nuts because, again, I'm thinking the CPS is working under their mission statement as in the best interest of protecting children. So I went down to the meeting and I asked them to put that in writing, that they were going to give me a medical navigator because I wasn't going to sign this blank service agreement. And then they wouldn't. So I counteroffered with put it in writing and I'll sign it, but they wouldn't. So then then they told me since I declined their service, I had to go down to the courthouse and officially stamp something or sign something. And when they lured me down to the courthouse, I thought that was bizarre with no, you know, I didn't know it was going to be a custody hearing. I had no idea. I go into the courtroom and then 10 people from the department come in, 8 to 10 people, and they've already got it all framed out.
Yeah.
There's a false petition. I don't have any medical records with me, any paperwork to dispute what they're saying. And what they tell the judge is a list of like 8 to 15 pages or whatever it was of lies, of just stuff that they made up. And I have nothing to refute that. And they did try to get me to sign something there. And I refused to sign. By that point, I started to see that I was being framed and started believing the guy the night before who had called me from the meeting.
Yeah.
And I refused to sign it. So then then a hearing started and they asked me during the hearing, or the judge ordered me, did a verbal consent. She said, well, I'm going to do a verbal, you know, consent. She took no sworn testimony, took in no evidence, and just put my son into the custody of the department. And then the department told me, we can do this one of two ways. You know, you could do this nice, or we can bring the police. How do you want to do it? And then my son and my daughter were at home playing Jenga. And I'm like, I don't want to bring the police to scare my son. So I just said, well, you can take him, thinking it was going to be something I could work out once I brought the documents back. And then he disappeared. Yeah. And had I not thought and my attorney is the former assistant attorney general for Colorado and Georgia, and he's a pretty well-established attorney with his credentials and knows what he's doing. Had I not been able to get him with this GoFundMe, and had I not been able to secure my rights and the right to a jury trial, I don't know that I would have even had visits with my son or seen him again, because there's so much money to be made with his disability and how they classify him. Yeah. And come to find out, they're taking him to all the evaluations and testings that they were claiming to save him from with me. So his head doctor emailed me after they took him and said, I told them not to remove him. I told them there was nothing wrong, that he really has this medical condition. And the department told me that my input didn't matter. They were going to take him anyway. So here's this world-renowned doctor, and and I think we went over that on your show before.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can't just get up and run with your kids, because I didn't see it coming.
Yeah. And and like we've said previously on the show, you had no reason not to trust people in authority. You were not a person who was, researching, the corruption in government.
Right.
You were just living your life. You were taking care of your children, and you expected that your rights were going to be, sanctified and, held up. You had no reason to believe that someone was going to, put you in a position where they're going to try to take your child. Now, I'd like to bring in Olivia, because she has been sitting there. So thank you for that update. Olivia, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you doing tonight?
I am excellent, Olivia. Thank you so much for joining us. Olivia Pleasant, how do you and Cyndi know each other?
We actually met because through Twitter, because of her case. I saw her case online, and we reached out. We reached out and started talking to each other, and we became very, very, very close, very, very, very quickly. We were kindred spirits and sisters in Christ from the moment that we met online.
So, Olivia, do you have a similar story to Cyndi? Have you been victimized by the Child Protective Services system as well?
Yes, I have, but I tend to focus on the broader issue. I definitely have been, yes, victimized through no due process, violations of several of my constitutional and my children's constitutional rights. My children went through horrendous abuse, and it was a very terrible ordeal that they went through with CPS, and that I went through with CPS, with false allegations, and they were left with people who they never should have been left with, and CPS suppressed evidence and facts and truth. However, this is pretty much the first time I've really publicly said anything about my story, as I like to really focus on what's going on nationwide with the children. As a political science major and in legal studies with hopes of going into constitutional law, I feel a bigger calling for my life and my purpose, and that's to reform CPS for all the generations past, present, and future. So I really focus on that, because I know through that my children will find their justice.
All right. Well, I like that. So, Olivia, what are you doing to help reform this broken system that we have here, either nationwide or in your specific area?
Well, really, I'm focusing on nationwide issues. I have spoken on several different programs. I have done thorough research and collected a lot of data about what CPS is doing nationwide. My biggest move that me and Cyndi are working on together, actually, is we are going to be federally requesting a RICO investigation on CPS. We're currently in the evidence gathering phase, where we need families all across America who have been violated of their constitutional amendment rights, their due process rights, and who have been victims of their children being trafficked and abused by CPS and the foster care system, to submit their information to www.ricocps.com. And we're going to use that to compose a thorough, airtight legal request to the Attorney General, to the President, to Senate, and to House, and to the FBI, that they investigate CPS federally for violation of the RICO Act of 1970.
That is just so incredible to hear. So it looks like people can contact you through the website. Do you want people who have found themselves to be victims of this corrupt system to get a hold of you through this so that they can become part of the case?
Yes, absolutely. We need parents who have been victimized, and families who have been victimized, even if it's a foster child or a child that parents' rights have been terminated wrongfully, or a whistleblower, someone from CASA, Guardians Ad Litem, CPS workers, whoever it is that is willing to speak out about the corruption that they have seen. absolutely, we would love for them to get on our website at www.ricocps.com and submit their information to us, and we will get back with them as soon as possible to start collecting their evidence and their timelines.
Now, do you ladies need people who are willing to donate their time or their expertise? Perhaps people like different types of professions, legal experts, things like that?
You know, I actually have one lawyer who is willing to look at everything, help us, and look through things. But yes, if there are any lawyers out there who are, you know, thoroughly well knowledge in CPS corruption, I would love to hear from them. I'd love to talk to them, love to get their input. As a legal studies major, I've been very, very successful. I've been writing case briefs for many years. I've been going through Supreme Court cases for many years. I'm very confident in my ability to put together an airtight RICO investigation request. But yes, if there are professionals out there who would like to donate their time and their efforts to reading over our evidence or answering questions as we are going through this process, if they could reach out to us, that would also be wonderful.
And Olivia, would you like me to give out your email address that I have? I've placed Cyndi's into the comment section.
The Olivia at oliviapleasant4texas.us.
Yes, that one. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Please,
Great.
I would absolutely love for that to be shared. And my personal website, people can get a hold of me there as well, because I will be also running for office shortly. So people can also get a hold of me there and see my stances on the issues, and they can also get more information about what I'm doing with Cyndi for this RICO request.
And I'm sorry, Olivia, what is your personal website where we can look at your information about your run for Congress?
It is www.oliviapleasant4, that's the number 4, texas.us.
Excellent. And there we are. We've got you right there. I will also place that into the chat box as well. So obviously this is a very preliminary court case here. I know that you ladies only just launched this website a couple of days ago. What kind of response have you gotten? I mean, I know that you're both part of several support groups which allow you to link up with parents who find themselves in a similar situation.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I want to say that I think even when we did the soft launch on Twitter, and I think, what was it, Olivia? Maybe after 2 days of launching the RICO CPS.com website to gather the evidence. And I wanted to say something about that. I think it's on the website. If there's parents out there, and I'm getting a lot of messages and a lot of calls from parents like myself who may not have hard evidence, and you need hard evidence for the request. It doesn't mean your case, if you've been violated and you don't have your children, even if your rights have been wrongfully terminated, that you will not see, your case will not be investigated. What we need for the RICO request is 2 cases from each state to present to the federal officials that Olivia's going to present it to. So in the evidence gathering phase, I think within the first 2 days, we had almost 70 people send in requests to offer their hard evidence from across the nation, Red Pill. And it wasn't, it didn't seem to have any kind of, emphasis on one area of the United States. It was just nationwide. And we also want to make a point out, and I don't know if Olivia set it up yet or not, we're also getting whistleblowers who I think are sick and tired of falsifying the documents and ripping children out of good homes where the parents have not had any crimes and have not been abusing their kids for the title funding or for whatever reasons they're doing it, and are being told by powers B, do this and do that. So we're getting whistleblowers coming forward, with hard evidence of audio and video and, legal documentation of emails where they're able to add to the RICO case, and Olivia's working on trying to put that in. So if there's anybody out there, because, honestly, I don't think this tidal wave can be stopped. There's a tidal wave of exposure, and I'm only in this 80 days. And I've said this before, if somebody were to tell me 81 days ago that this was going on in America, I would have said there's more to the story. I would not have believed a parent who told me that their child was taken. I wouldn't have. And I hate to be that judgmental, but I wouldn't have believed a parent until it happened to me. And then you can see the falsification of the documents, the secret court hearings, it's just a really unbelievable. And so the whistleblowers are now coming forward and kind of exposing the different business models that are being worked out in the Department of Human Services, of how they're profiling and how they're targeting different markets to take the kids away. It's really interesting to see it that way. It's mind-blowing, honestly.
Yeah, for someone who has not been doing research on this subject, to be thrust directly into the middle of it, it's a very difficult pill to swallow. This is probably one of the hardest things, I think, for a lot of people to get over. They can understand, general corruption. They can understand, crimes, involving, bribery and stuff like that. It's very easy for people to swallow those pills. But when it comes to our children being stolen and it being essentially sanctioned by large sections of the state, a lot of people, their default is just to say, well, they wouldn't do it unless there was a reason. But, the sad fact of the matter is, and I know this from my own research, and I know this from the many, many people who have contacted me on this subject, this is something that happens very, very often, like at a staggering level all across the United States. And I have not heard of a single area where it doesn't seem to happen.
I want this to sink in. The government is stealing our children. Let's just let that sink in. They're stealing our children from us, the families, and selling them. That alone should be on every platform across America. Before the sports, these are our children. This is our blood. These are our kids. They're stealing them every day under false allegations, no due process, abuse of power, and they're selling our kids to make a profit. I can't believe that more people aren't talking about this. It's really unbelievable. And the evidence that's coming in is astonishing. It's hard for evidence nationwide. Tidal wave that's coming now can't be stopped. So to anybody on the side where you feel like you're stuck in your job, you feel like you're going to get in trouble if you come out and tell, have your whistleblowing, information kept confidential, and we're asking them to reach out. I think Jim at Northwest Liberty News has a blowing hotline and an email. Olivia has one on her website set up. We've gotten that we're going to on the RICO PS specific for whistleblower that I guess maybe they've just got convicted to the point where they're just tired of doing it and tired of seeing it. And you really don't want to be caught up on that side when the hammer comes down.
It's really scary. I think one of the reasons that maybe it's so difficult for people to get past it is because it wasn't until very recently that our own government had even put much of a focus on human trafficking and the problem with child trafficking from foster care in particular. I was trying to find the DOJ press release where they recently stated openly that there is a huge issue with children being trafficked directly from the foster care system. We have essentially a system set up in the United States where they are farming these children, and they're doing it for profit. They're doing it for sick motivations. It is very scary. And like I said earlier, if you find yourself in a situation where these people decide that they want to take your children, this is a network that is ingrained in these systems. They've got judges, they've got lawyers, they've got medical professionals, they've got people who are supposed to be social workers, taking care of your children, looking out for the best interest of your children. I put that in quotations because that's not what they're doing. They are existing solely for their own benefit and for the sick motivations of some really, really awful people. And this gets to the heart of the cabal's business globally. Trafficking of children underpins so much of what we are trying to do. You know, when you get to the heart of it, it's really all about that in many, many cases. Cyndie, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think Olivia probably has that state report that came out in June memorized, where I think it's, 86% of the children that are trafficked are coming from the CPS foster care. And traffic doesn't have to be sex trafficked.
Yeah.
Some of the kids are getting medically experimented on, FDA approved drugs. You know, they take them and they put them in medical homes. Some of them are getting sold just for adoption because the exchange of money is so high. Some of them are getting, you know, it's just different categories of people that are reaching out to me. And there seems to be 4 or 5 categories. Olivia, do you have the exact numbers on the percentages and what that details of that state report?
Yeah. Okay, so the state report outlines that between 86 to 88% of children nationwide are trafficked. However, when we look at individual states, in the state of Texas, there were over 78,890 children within 1 year who were not reported missing and turned up to be sexually exploited children. In Connecticut, there was 88 children who were seized in lieu of child trafficking, and out of those, 86 of those children were found to be under CPS care or had significant contact with CPS in the past. So while the state report outlines anywhere from 86 to 88% of the children being trafficked through CPS.
Olivia, we lost you. Well, while we're waiting for Olivia's connection to even out, I just want to let everybody know that Patrick Howley from the Epic Times and Patriot Soapbox and Big League Politics, he is going to be joining us next Friday for an in-depth conversation on much more information related to exactly how deep this goes all throughout the entire United States. Real briefly, I just need to give a couple of thank yous. Raval Nona, just thank you for that super chat. Sean Stevens says, where we go one, we go all, God and country. Michael Kenny says, want to give you a hug, Cyndie. Hang in there. Thank you for that, Michael. Also says, they can form chains to prevent illegal criminals from being deported. We need to form chains for this. Could not agree more. John Stewart 1 says, tell her to call the White House and get Trump involved. We'll ask about that in a moment. Danny Marie Bernadette D'Angelo says, God bless you and thank you for all you do. I don't know for which one of us that is, but thank you for whoever. Sean Stevens says, truth doesn't set you free in this liberal environment. Only money that isn't worth anything does. That's very, very sadly true. Michael Kenny again says, fictitious...
Sorry, did you guys...
You're a little robo there, Olivia. Looks like your mic is on mute. Are you there?
Hear me now?
Go ahead. I think that you just came back in a hurry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I wasn't sure if you had caught the numbers. I was talking about the state reports and the various or.
That's right. Go ahead and continue.
Okay. Well, so the state report, like I said, has outlined 86 to 88% of children guilty of, found in the sex trafficking system. In Texas, it was around 78,800 children not reported missing, found to be a part of child sex trafficking who had contact with CPS. And in Connecticut, out of 88 children seized, 86 of those children had significant contact or in CPS custody. So when we look at the individual states, we're actually finding numbers as high as 92% of the children under CPS care to be trafficked by CPS or sexually exploited by them.
That's so frightening.
Do you know, Red Pill? I've only met 4 parents, out of all the parents that I've talked to that have got their kids back. And all 4 of those families, one has 1 child, another has 5 children. Out of all of those families, every single one of those families, their kids were sexually abused in the foster care system.
Yeah. No.
And it's just, the statistics say, they're stealing our kids, America. I in bed every night crying, and I can't sleep because I miss my son. My son is gone. And had I not gone to Dream, trying to contact all of my representatives, sent all of, Olivia, you've seen all my evidence. You can just probably speak to some of the people in the chat and say, what are some of my violations? None of them, Hill. I'm so angry that he has a black eye right now. I could see nails. Boy, I knew who gave it to him. Boy, I'm angry.
You have so much right to be. You know, I can only imagine being in the situation where you are completely powerless. You are at the whim of the state, and you know, and it might even be a little bit easier if you had the ability to contact your son. You know, I mean, they're ostensibly keeping you away, and it seems to me that what they're doing is they're trying to break that parental bond. You know,
yes.
They are trying to push you and your own child apart, and you know, the things that they asked you not to say, not asking you know how he was, or telling him that you love him. That's just that's insane. You know, not being able to tell your child.
Yeah, I tell him I love him. I don't know how many times a day. Now home, and the guy said to him, "Well, you can't take that home with you." He said, "I get to go home." And the supervisor says, no, back to where, he said, that's not my home. He said, back to where you're staying. He said, that's not my home. He said to the guy, it's not my home. My home, and then he said, if I'm a good boy at Disney World, can I get to come home? I mean, they're emotionally, this is going to be the damage causing to the children that they're separating. I made a decision, and Olivia and I are so, I don't know, want to say left foot, right foot connected in a way. It was almost like an intuitive, divine separate calling to put this RICO Act together. And I'm using this anger that I have toward this agency to move forward with this movement and to make a change where we can. And I know it's not specific to my case. I'm doing everything I can with my case possible, and certainly not forgetting my son, which is first and foremost. But I mean, I had no idea. Suicide rates are out off the chain. Parents, do you know how many parents are coming out now that we're just coming out speaking about it? There's Justin Banta in California. You got to have him on. He's a vet with, I think, a record of a parking ticket. His story is unbelievable. And there's a few of us that are really speaking out, and it really seems to give courage. And Olivia and I have found hope. Would you say that, Olivia? We found hope with this RICO for the parent coming out saying, maybe there is that I'll see my kid again. Maybe I'm not such a David in this Goliath, storm, so to speak, for lack of better words.
Yeah, absolutely. The parents that I've connected with and that I've talked to, even before we launched the RICO request, we're starting to see a restoration of hope. Whenever CPS was starting to get called out on these stations that are here on the internet, we started seeing a glimmer of hope. But now we have parents reaching out like crazy. I've gotten over 30 emails today alone for requests, and there is so much hope now in these parents, and some of them are going, this is our last resort. Some of them are going, our grandparents who are saying, this is our last resort. Thank you for what you're doing. We have gotten so many people who have reached out to us just to say thank you for what you are doing. And for us, it's not about the thank yous. For us, it's about freeing these children and putting American families first again.
Well, that would be the first thing I'd say to you guys is thank you for what you're doing, because I've spoken to so many parents myself who basically just find themselves in a helpless and hopeless position because the knowledge and the awareness about this problem has, really been isolated. They have kept these people apart from each other. And now, thank God, in this kind of, interconnected world we live in with social media and the ability for us to reach out and to communicate with each other, and to join some type of a class action suit like this, which will allow people to band together and use their collective power to show and expose the incredible corruption that we find in so many different agencies throughout the United States. It's just awful. Well, ladies, we've got 2 minutes until the top of the hour, so Cyndie, let's start with you. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, I just want to say, if there's anybody out there who, is listening that can't believe this can happen, I just want to say, I was in your spot too, not so long, and it can, and it's not, a threat or a joke. It to you, and it's happening every day here in America. And just love your kids, be on your guard. If your gut tells you something isn't right, trust it, and anybody who wants to reach out to either help or who needs can bring Michael home 1111@gmail.com. My Twitter is at GCR Marketing, and my name on the Twitter is Cyndie. It's at GCR Marketing. And if anybody, thank you to anybody who donated. They scrubbed my GoFundMe from the Twitter. If anybody wants to do that, that's going for my attorney. It's very expensive. God bless anybody who can contribute to that, because that's the only way really I'm going to get my son home is with this attorney. Yeah. So, and I just want to say, never give up. If anybody's out there, just don't give up. This is the American family, and they're stealing our kids. Right out, in every city across the nation, it's happening.
All right. And Olivia, what would you like to leave the audience with?
I want to tell the audience that whenever they reach out to us at ricocps.com, they don't need to be on the defensive, and they don't have to convince us to be on their side. We are already on their side 100%. They have been victimized, and so many of them are used to having to explain to other people what CPS has done, and we are fully aware what CPS has done. And what we want to do is we want to empower the people who the power is vested in by the United States Constitution, that so many people have forgotten that, and we want to give them the power to make their voices so loud that the federal government has no choice but for them to be heard. And that is why this is so near and dear to both of our hearts, because we want the voices to be so loud that they can't be ignored, and that change that we demand must be applied within full compliance of the law, because this is not a lawless nation. We are a nation of justice, of independence, and of freedom, and we have the right to uphold that. And that includes the American Family Unit, primarily and first.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you both for joining us. I know that we're going to have you both on. We're going to continue to get updates on Michael's progress and where Cyndie is at with the case. And Olivia, just to be clear, you're going to be running for Congress here in 2020. Is that right?
I am looking at running in 2020 win the state of Texas.
All right. Excellent. All right, so I just want to remind everyone the links for all of the websites we've seen, everything that we've talked about, it is in the description of the show below. I am going to be splitting tonight's live stream into 2 separate segments, so that if you want to share this particular segment much easier with people, you can go ahead and do that. Please give me about 24 hours to get that up. Once this video is done processing, you will be able to go ahead and share it just like a normal video. So I just want to thank again both of you for being here. And as always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News for Friday Night Livestream. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.